Welcome to Partners in Prevention. I'm Jennifer Stein with Prevent Child Abuse Habersham. With summer upon us, we wanted to dedicate this episode to helping prevent lawnmower accidents and accidents that happen due to other lawn equipment. In the United States each year, every day one child has a tragic accident related to lawnmowers or lawn equipment. So to dedicate this episode, we've brought in an advocate. Lane Gresham is our guest today. She's with helping support an organization called Limbs Matter. Lane is also a parent of a child that suffered from a tragic accident. So Lane, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to share this story and to raise awareness during June, National Safety Month.
So it is indeed National Safety Month. Wonderful. Limbs Matter, the organization. Tell us a little bit about its purpose and how it came about.
Well, Limbs Matter came about because there are too many small children who are suffering from amputations as a result of lawnmower accidents. So they got really focused on creating a PSA, 13 families who had been impacted by lawnmower accidents, specifically amputations of some sort, whether it was fingers, hands, feet, toes, that sort of thing, came together last summer in Orlando at the home of Jody Bainter, whose son had been in an accident like that many years ago. They filmed a PSA, they came together, they shared stories. It was just this incredible energy that happened as a result of those families coming together. And so the result was the campaign, Limbs Matter, kept it really simple. And basically their message is to keep small children inside when you are cutting the grass. And they felt like that, keeping it really simple, drilling it down to that could really help prevent these accidents that were causing these lives to be changed.
Well, and how wonderful for families that have been affected to be able to rally together for this common purpose. Now you're a parent and your child was affected by this. Will you share the story of what transpired with your son?
I'll be happy to. Joseph is my son. He'll be 22 in July. And when he was 13, just like many teenage boys, he was reluctant to go and help in the yard. It was early on a Sunday morning. It was the week before Sunday school was starting, so we were enjoying that last little bit of summer before we got into our fall routine. He was in the yard on a slope. The grass was still a little bit wet, and his right foot slipped under the push mower. As a result of that, he lost his big toe and part of his foot, kind of sheared it off. And that was when our journey began in those moments after that accident. He was life-flighted to Children's Health Care at Eggleston. What we learned very quickly was that with amputations, the protocol is to immediately transport by air. Lawnmower accidents, boat propeller accidents are classified as dirty wounds, so there's a high risk of infection. So he was at Children's for 2 weeks, went through 6 different surgeries because every other day they had to go in and clean out the wound when he was under anesthesia to make sure that there was no resulting infection. There was a bit of the bone left, and we were hoping for stability for walking, that he would, that would remain, and the bone was not left intact. It died. So, but what that did was that allowed for his foot to be closed, the wound to be closed, and us not to have to go through skin grafts. So his recovery, even though they told us he would not walk normally, his recovery was a lot faster than it would have been had he had to have skin grafts, which so many of these accidents, will result in that, which is a much extended recovery. And Joseph was is very stoic. And he's what we call our myth buster, because you don't need your big toe to balance. And he went on to play baseball and football, and this summer he's going to start walking the Appalachian Trail. So we're really excited about that and about the recovery that he made and
overcoming
that, absolutely.
That he was faced with.
Right.
Well, and this is from what I've read and with Limbs Matter and just some other research. This is just a story that's just all too common. And I want to say that some of the research indicated that a lot of the accidents are anywhere between 1 and 3-year-olds. And then it jumps to the teenage years.
That's right.
Where they tend to be, helping the family out, doing the chores around the house. From Joseph's side, were there any other side effects that he had to overcome? Anything as a family unit or things like that?
Well, and this happens no matter what age. If there is a parent involved, in our case, Bill, my husband, was on the riding lawnmower in the front of the house while Joseph was in the back with a push mower. So of course there's always the guilt of the parent or the grandparent in many cases, that they could have done something different to prevent the accident. We were in the hospital at Children's for those 2 weeks, and there were 2 other victims of lawnmower accidents there at the same time, and one was a little girl, 3 years old, who had run out to see her grandfather on the riding lawnmower, and he didn't see her and backed over her. And so that was what I'm talking about, the guilt of the caregiver.
Right.
The other was a teenage girl, similar to Joseph, but because the pain level was, you're trying to manage pain at that stage, she had become addicted to morphine, so
Certainly.
she was struggling with that and trying to come off of that. So there's a lot of things peripheral to a situation like this.
Besides the physical damage,
that's right.
The psychological
Right.
that goes with it, not
Right.
only for the child going through
but
it,
for the family.
but for the family as
Sure.
a whole. So with us sharing this today, what are some hopes that you hope viewers might get out of hearing your personal story?
Well, I just hope people will think before they either send their child out at too young an age, or with no experience and no help from an older person, or when they're little, just keep them inside and make sure that they are supervised by an adult while another person is outside working on the yard. You hear about it every year. Last year there were 2 older gentlemen in our area who were killed when the tractor or the lawnmower flipped. Both in Northeast Georgia, within a couple of months of each other. So you hear about, lawn equipment and then farm, like tractors and things like that, if they're on a slope or if the grass is wet or something like that. So just be careful and be aware.
With this, you guys are professionals, intelligent individuals, good intentions of instilling those positive life learning lessons in regards to chores. But it could happen to anybody.
It can happen to anyone. That's exactly right.
Well, let's take a quick break.
Okay.
And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about how common these things are and how they possibly could be prevented. So be right back.
Every day in the United States, a child will lose a limb to a lawnmower accident. Committed to making a difference, a group of concerned parents, all affected by this life-altering circumstance, is mobilizing.
In 2004, our son Jake was in a lawnmower accident, and sadly, my husband Brett was operating the machine. This past year, we decided to reach out to all these families we've been meeting over the last 11 years and ask them, would they want to come together with us to talk to families around the world about lawnmower safety?
It's been emotional, it's been powerful, of just spending time with the children that have been involved in the accidents to see that it does get better and there is hope for tomorrow.
13 families, one voice with a simple message. Keep your kids inside when mowing the lawn.
Welcome back to Partners in Prevention. I'm Jennifer Stein with Prevent Child Abuse Habersham, and today we have with us Lane Gresham. Lane is an advocate for an organization called Limbs Matter, and recently just shared with us your story of your son Joseph's and his trials of being a survivor of an accident with a lawnmower.
Right.
He being at the time 13 years of age, now he's 22.
Almost, yeah, in July.
But lost a portion of his foot. Some common mistakes that parents might make. What are some things that we could share with the viewers to help them realize what we just might be a misconception out there?
Well, one thing is to follow the guidelines that are provided with your mower, or to look online. There's multiple organizations that offer safety guidelines for lawnmower use, proper lawnmower use. But really don't let your child cut the grass before they're 12 years old. That's a big one. A lot of times you'll see smaller children out kind of struggling with even a push mower. And then I think it's 15 for a riding lawnmower.
Okay.
to have a child on a riding lawnmower, just so that they're big enough and developmentally they're able to handle that level of responsibility. So that's a big thing. And with the little ones, as we mentioned earlier, just try to keep them inside while you're outside taking care of the family chores. So those are really simple, because these accidents, for the most part, are preventable.
Well, and you know, the trajectory, my understanding, the trajectory of a blade is as strong as a .357 caliber gun.
That's right. Yeah, I've used that before in some of the materials that
you know, you just don't think about that. You know, with that, you've got some, you know, parents that, you know, they think they're in control of the riding mower.
Right.
And so it's not a big deal to let the child sit on my lap.
Right.
But you know, in an instant, and just
things
an
can
instant.
change. And we know little ones too, toddlers are wiggly, and you know, they're easily distracted, and it's just simpler to keep them inside so that you don't take the chance. It's just not worth the risk.
And make it that common practice.
Make it part of your routine, that they have something special to do inside, maybe with another parent or caregiver, while the adult takes care of that responsibility.
And a good reminder too is, as adults, that we shouldn't be out cutting the grass by ourselves. Being the only one home.
That's right.
You know, because
exactly
your son was of age, and just within a blink of an eye, this happened to him.
Right.
What you know, you mentioned that he lost part of his toes. What are some of the most common injuries that happen for people that are injured?
Amputations, as far as fingers and toes, are very common, you know, with the digits, because you might just quickly want to clear the you know, the lawnmower, and it's still running. You're trying to save time, and you stick your hand there, and it just the force of those blades, you know, you're just not being careful. So always make sure that the lawnmower is off before you do anything to it. They're also very hot, so a lot of times you'll see burns with lawnmowers, where people will, you know, brush up against it, not, you know, being aware of the heat that can be generated by a machine like that. So
do that. With some of the research shows that riding mowers have a much higher rate of injury than the walk-behind mowers. More deaths related to that too, and that you had mentioned with Joseph's situation, multiple surgeries.
Multiple surgeries, and he was fortunate in that, you know, he was only in the hospital 2 weeks. He did not require skin grafts. A lot of times you'll have those complications, and it'll be 6 or 8 weeks, because that's what we were initially told when we got there, that it would be 6 or 8 weeks in the hospital. So, you know, it is just a very complicated injury. Same thing with boat propellers. If you think about it, like I said earlier, they're classified as a dirty wound. And as soon as we got to the hospital and got to know our orthopedic surgeons, Dr. Stephanie Martin, she said, "I hate summer."
Okay.
And that was really very telling, because that's what they see in the summertime: boat propellers, lawnmower accidents, and the same type of very complicated care that's required. So, and very expensive too.
So prevention-wise, what are some things parents can do, you know, to prepare for the season? What are some prevention things that they can have as some rules for the family, besides keeping the child inside?
Right, and making sure age appropriate, and that you're using the lawn equipment just based on the guidelines that are provided or that are available online.
Okay. And then, you know, I would imagine too, you know, you talked about with the blade, and clearing debris, so maybe going around the yard and making sure things are picked
That's
up.
right.
Of course, making sure, I would imagine, a child on the inside, if they saw a parent on the outside and a toy was left out overnight, that fear that child would have to go run out and grab that.
Right, any kind of anything that's laying in the yard, like rocks too, because a projectile coming out of a lawnmower is pretty dangerous as well. So that's something as well. And you know, and also don't make, one thing that I really, it just makes me cringe when I see it, is the toy lawnmowers.
Okay.
And people think it's really kind of cute to have the dad and the little kid kind of side by side with the lawnmower, and that just romanticizes the whole process, and it makes it seem like something fun for the child, and it just, if you just take that out of the equation, it's never an issue. So they don't think that a real lawnmower is a toy. So, and that, you know, just don't take it as seriously maybe as they should. So
as a potential such hazards. Well, goodness, of the 20,000 injuries last year, 17,000 of them were children. So it definitely is eye-opening. With this, let's take a quick break and let's come back. We want to share a little bit more about Limbs Matter and how people can get involved.
Great.
And so that way, too, if there's others out there that have undergone this, where they might be able to seek some support.
Wonderful.
So,
Thank you.
Very good. We'll be right back after this message.
Every day in the United States, a child will lose a limb to a lawnmower accident. We know firsthand because this happened to our families. We have come together to share our stories to prevent this tragedy from happening to your family.
It was a normal day.
It was time to mow the lawn.
I put the mower in reverse and backed up.
That day changed my child's life forever.
Don't let this happen to your family.
Welcome back to Partners in Prevention. I'm Jennifer Stein with Prevent Child Abuse Habersham, and this month, with June being National Safety Month, we have been speaking with Lane Gresham. Lane is an advocate for an organization called Limbs Matter. She's been sharing with us her story about her son, how some of his toes were lost due to a tragic lawnmower accident, and just helping spread the word for the community and to help prevent. Some great key points that you brought up today, Lane. Let's talk a little bit more about Limbs Matter.
Okay, great. This is an organization that was started last summer. 13 families came together in Orlando. Jody Bainter, I made contact with Jody through a closed Facebook group called LMA Survivors, and I didn't know we were an acronym, but that's Lawnmower Accident Survivors.
Okay.
So it was a place for families to go to share information and to support each other, and I had certainly wished that we had it back in 2007, but that was pre-Facebook, we believe.
Right.
So anyway, so I got involved last year. Jody invited me to come be a part of the PSA. Joseph was taking summer classes last summer, so the timing didn't work for us to be a part, but at that juncture I knew that this was going to be something that I wanted to support, and it would be a great tool for us to use going forward, because I've been an advocate since this happened and the smoke cleared, basically, because I did not want other families to go through this if there was a way that we could prevent it just by sharing our story. So Joseph and I, and then I have been sharing this every year during June. We started with newspaper columns. We've been on the radio. We've been on Children's Health Care as a featured story during June. But every June we try to bring the story back into focus so that people are aware that these accidents are preventable. And Limbs Matter was the perfect PSA last year for families across the nation to share. It simplified the message, and it really brought a focus to the most vulnerable, and these are our toddlers, who might be darting outside to try to speak to mom or dad as they are on the lawnmower or pushing the lawnmower, and the sound, and just not being aware, and so many accidents do happen. So,
well, and just so eye-opening to hear of the prevalence. And then there again, knowing that we could prevent it by something as simple as keeping that child indoors, and making sure that we've instilled in our child the correct shoes, making sure that they don't do certain things until the mower
they're
is
ready.
off, and things like that. So some key pieces that we've shared with them today. If the viewers are watching and they would like to find out more about Limbs Matter, how might they get to that website?
It's limbsmatter.com.
Okay.
There's a tremendous amount of information there. There's several PSAs. There's the story of Jody's son, similar to what I've shared today about Joseph, their personal story. And she's actually written a book too, so there's information about her book. They're based in Orlando. And then there's one video that I'd like to encourage people to watch. It's not the finished, polished PSA, but it's the one where the families are coming together, interacting, and you see the older children with the younger children. Some of them, of course, have prosthetics. But it's very moving to see that community of people who have shared something very difficult come together with such joy and hope. and sharing it so that they can prevent. So these kids are really doing important work as advocates. So.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
Well, and when you're recovering from something like this isn't an overnight situation.
No, it's not.
This can take months, it can take years for them to work through, to have that system of support.
That's right.
So important. So, well, good. Well, before we end this month's episode, is there anything else that you'd like to share with the community about Joseph's story, about your travels and this journey, or about Limbs Matter, or just lawnmower safety?
Well, again, I'm a passionate advocate for lawnmower safety. June is National Safety Month, but it's something we can remember throughout the season when we're out in our yard and we're using this equipment. Just keep your little kids inside. Keep them inside, and make sure that your children that you are trying to have incorporate a responsibility and a work ethic with, that they are using the equipment properly and that they are following the guidelines that are provided. And there's a tremendous amount of information on the internet about lawnmower safety, and we just want to make sure that people are educating themselves about it.
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely. Yeah. Well, let's try to avoid any other children getting hurt in such a way.
Yeah.
But thank you for being here today.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
So appreciate it.
Very good. Well, thank you for joining us, and we hope you'll stay tuned for next month's episode. But in the meantime, let's keep our children safe. Let's be acknowledging what the protocols are for that equipment, and help these children live happy, healthy childhoods. Thank you.
Every day in the United States, a child will lose a limb to a lawnmower accident. Committed to making a difference, a group of concerned parents, all affected firsthand by this terrible, life-altering circumstance, is mobilizing. On July 25th, 2015, Jody and I hosted 13 families from all over the country at our home in Orlando, Florida, to create a public service announcement about lawnmower safety. The PSA is the cornerstone of a national marketing campaign called Limbs Matter for lawnmower safety.
In 2004, our son Jake was in a lawnmower accident, and sadly, my husband Brett was operating the machine. And subsequently, in 2008, Jake became an above-the-knee amputee. This past year, we felt like our calling was bigger, and so we decided to reach out to all these families we've been meeting over the last 11 years and ask them, would they want to come together with us to have one voice to talk to families around the world about lawnmower safety.
It's been emotional, it's been powerful, and very impactful. Of just spending time with families that have been involved in crisis and seeing the children that have been involved in the accidents, to see that it does get better and there is hope for tomorrow.
For each family attending, the opportunity to be personally involved in this cause was reason enough to travel hundreds of miles.
We drove 22 hours from the middle of New Hampshire down to Orlando in one day. But you know, less than a year ago, when Grady had his accident and it affected our whole family, we knew that if we were going to go through all that, it needed to be for a reason.
It's been a very positive experience. It's actually helped me a little, helped my son. He gets to see other kids that have had it happen, so he knows he's not alone.
For many, the chance to share stories and meet others who have gone through the same emotional pain and sacrifice was just as important.
We connect in a way nobody ever could. The trauma that we've been through and the years, not even a whole year for us, of heartache and struggle and healing and tears, and to listen to each other's stories is really powerful.
My takeaway from this experience down here with all these families, it is possible that, you know, you can get to a spot that it's not just going to the doctor. It's not just going, that the kids are, you know, they're just being kids again. You know, you're out playing, running, fishing, being kids again.
It was important for us to come and help make this PSA because we wanted to get the word out there as much as possible. We know not everybody's going to listen, but if we can prevent one family or a person from going through what we've gone through, it's all worth it.
Rising up from these heartbreaking family tragedies has been a rousing sense of purpose, to speak up and make a difference for others. It's a passionate mission being led by a regular group of people connected merely by circumstance and fate, to protect those who come after them from having an accident like they did.
We really believe with all of our hearts that the tragedy that these families have faced, this weekend, a lot of healing happened for us. And together, we now will use our voice and hopefully prevent other families from facing what our families have lived through. That's our prayer.
"13 families, one voice with a simple message. Keep your kids inside when mowing the lawn."